Hello, I'm Scott Hamilton and welcome to the third half, and this is a wee Dram with me and Steve O'Donnell. I think every time I say a wee Dram it gets more and more Scottish. A wee Dram, it just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
It does.
It does. So we talk a lot on here about ideas, innovation, progress and education, but very rarely do we speak to someone who actually sits at the point where those ideas either become real or quietly die. Today's guest is Gillian Docherty, Chief Commercial Officer at the University of Strathclyde, Chair of CodeBase, former CEO of the Data Lab, and someone who has spent her career right in the middle of Scotland's innovation ecosystem, from startups to scale-ups, from academia to government and big enterprise. Now, it's worth saying we might be in slightly dangerous territory here. Gillian, Steve and me, three jocks on a Friday afternoon and a wee Dram. What could possibly go wrong?
Not much.
We've all got drinking vessels of some description, and we're not going to give any secrets away. Anyway, Gillian, great to have you on. How are you?
I'm great, thanks, Scott. Great to be on, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. And I've not had a wee Dram yet, but I might need one at the end of it, so be gentle.
I was just going to say, 10 past 2 on a Friday afternoon? We're not far off. We're not far off.
It's after 11 o'clock. It's all fine.
What is it to say? It's 11 o'clock somewhere in the world, isn't it? Yeah. So, listen, Gillian, that has been some career so far. I want to start, give you the mic a little bit, and I want to why don't you tell me a little bit about IBM, but more about leaving IBM after 22 years and what that was like, because that's some old change.
It was, when I started, I got a job at IBM through what was at the time the University Meltdown. They came round my uni and got invited to interview, and then got told I was coming to a second interview, and there was me checking the train times to Greenock, and it turned out to be in Portsmouth. So I had to get the map out, and starting at Glasgow and Greenock, I went a long way, and was really fortunate enough to get a job, graduate job down in Portsmouth. So I left the great land of Scotland and headed south, and what was a short 4-year kind of graduate contract turned into 22 years, and moves back to Scotland, moves back to London, moved back to Scotland, and it was great. So I really enjoyed it, and when I came back to Scotland in 2005, I was running different parts of the IBM business units in Scotland. It was great. I was continually asked if I wanted to come back to London, because I think at the time I was at a level where my next grade, as it were, I would needed to be running a $1 billion business, and that just didn't exist in Scotland and still doesn't. So I was quite happy here as a wee girl, and I was quite content. And then I was approached by a very good executive recruiter for this thing called the Data Lab. And I remember it came in on Christmas Eve, and Scott, you'll remember Christmas Eve, right in the middle of Q4, right in the middle of closing deals. It was filed away and not looked at again until in January, after the year end. And I looked at it and I thought, that's not me, kind of the start-up-y thing, helping companies innovate. Government funding had been committed, but build it from scratch, real looking for experience in founding something new, making it work. I was like, well, you cut me in half and I was blue type thing. And other colours do exist. But something happened in the January, and I'd written a, listen, thanks, but I don't think it's me email, and I didn't send it. I put it in draft. And then I remember there was some edict come from Armonk. You'll remember those as well, Scott, saying this is how we're going to structure our go-to-market this year. And I thought, that doesn't work in Scotland. And needless to say, it was like, well, just get on with it. So I phoned the recruiter on a Friday to say, look, thank you. Apologies, I've not responded, but I'm not going to apply. I don't think it's for me. And she was great. She said, look, forget what it says in the job description. Just tell me about you. Tell me what you do, what motivates you, what excites you. And 20 minutes in, she said, I am not hanging up until you agree to apply for this job.
Oof.
So I'm going to ruin your weekend, because I'm going to hold you on the phone all weekend until you agree to apply. And I'd not written a CV in 20 odd years. I'd never, you don't do that. You just either you get plucked from one job and placed into another, or you point at another role and you think, oh, I quite fancy that, and off you go. So over the weekend, I wrote a first CV in 20 odd years, and I enlisted a couple of good pals that I worked with at the time, saying, look, can you help? Because I know I'm going to be absolutely rubbish at this. It's going to be awful. Can you help me polish it up so at least I do a decent job of submitting it on Monday? So they did. And then the more I got to understand about the purpose of the data lab, the mission of it, the more I was hooked, the more I was like, actually, I really want this. And so went through the process and got offered the job and had to decide if I was resigning after 22 years with no package, Scott, no package here,
It's I
to
tell
do
you
this
what,
thing that was, with a 4-year-old, a lot of financial commitments. And I resigned and off I went.
it's honestly, see, as I listen to you, and we've talked about this a few times over the years since you left. I mean, it is a huge step. And Steve and I talked to quite a lot of people on Away Dram and on the show, and this kind of emotional step of people in a career, especially when you've been, more than 10, never mind 20 years, to go to something into the deep unknown, that kind of emotional step, psychological step, commercial step from the comfort side of IBM. There must just have been so much going on for you to juggle to make that decision.
I think so. The other thing, it was a 5-year contract. It wasn't even an open-ended thing because it depended on how it worked. And I guess any kind of new thing, you're going to have that risk element. Maybe I was just... What made it a little bit easier is, I think, at that stage in your career, you've got a level of confidence that, see if it all gone absolutely pear-shaped.
Yeah.
I'd have phoned a couple of pals in IBM like you, Scott, and said, can I come back? Or somebody else, my pals in Oracle or Microsoft or, somewhere else. So there was a little bit of, it would be really horrible and really unpleasant. And, but I felt a level of confidence I could get something that would pay the bills.
Aye. Oh, no, absolutely. And listen, and looking back now, 10 years later, the career has just been motoring since then. And I guess Portsmouth and Greenock seem like an awful long time and distance away. So listen, let's get into the Scotland innovation piece, because I'm fascinated about this, and I know it's something that Steve's very close to. So see, when people talk about innovation in Scotland, right, what do they get right and what do they completely misunderstand? And Gillian, maybe you kick off, then maybe Steve, you can pick up as well.
I think, I think Scotland does punch above its weight at the front end of innovation. I think for our size, we produce disproportionate amount of high quality research, great spin-outs, early stage startups, tech startups now that are getting a lot of support from TechScaler, the Scottish Government programme that CodeBase run. Really good, consistent, strong in areas like data and health, engineering, energy, and technically credible companies. And we've definitely improved as well. As I say, TechScaler's definitely materially improved founder density, access, confidence, especially kind of outside the central belt. And we've had a long history of innovation, and invention probably is more accurate, past the hundreds of years, real invention. You can look up all of the amazing inventors. Where we've lacked, not just recently, but in history, is capitalising on those inventions. Other nations, other industries have capitalised, like they've made the big money on the back of that innovation and invention. So there's still frustratingly what happens after that early promise. So great at getting good companies started, getting them to a reasonable size. But it's pretty consistent, and the data shows this, that we're still not scaling up. And our scale up work, it's not quite there. So that's, I think, where we're really good, and where I think we've still got a bit of a journey to go on.
And Steve, what's your thinking on that, and why do you think that is, that we're struggling to get from that kind of brilliant early ideas and startups to truly scaling up and forming big companies?
I've got some really clear ideas about why that is. and some recommendations about the things that we could do to do better. But I wanted to go back to something that Gillian said first, which was around, Scotland being innovative. I remember as a youngster, and it was a long, long time ago, being an engineer was something that folk wanted to do. It was considered to be a top profession. We were surrounded by shipbuilding, car manufacturing, vehicle manufacturing, IBM's manufacturing facility in Greenock. We were a manufacturing nation, a shipbuilding nation, heavy engineering, and so it was normal. You were brought up and you expected that if you could get a job as an engineer, you would do really well. And I think in other parts of the UK, it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same agenda. Being an engineer wasn't quite as high status as it is in Scotland. I remember when I first moved to London, I always thought of myself as a pretty average engineer. And without being too arrogant, I moved to London and I was streets ahead of all of my competitors because the competition in Scotland to be a good engineer was really high. So I absolutely agree. It certainly was true in my youth that being an engineer was something that people wanted to do. So why is the UK, I'm going to extend this to the UK, not just Scotland, why is the UK not so good at bridging between seed stage businesses that get going and to really large sort of unicorn style businesses that they're capable of getting to but don't manage it? And I think it's because if we analyse the countries where it really works, there's an ecosystem to support it. And we don't quite have that ecosystem here. We've got really generous tax advantages for early stage businesses in SEIS and EIS. And it's relatively straightforward, if sometimes a little convoluted, to get some funding in that space. But beyond that, it's much more challenging to get to being funded by professional investors or venture capitalists. And I think there's a number of key missing points. Number one is, although we get spin outs from universities, my experience of dealing with universities is that there's a lack of experience on how to really scale a brilliant business. And things like the major constraints there are in shareholder agreements and articles, and the rules that are applied, and the sluggish nature of making decisions from holding companies and universities to actually help them get forward really doesn't help. If you go to Silicon Valley, the universities are set up, their balance sheet is predicated on making money from spin-outs. The same thing hasn't really happened in Scotland. The universities haven't got big balance sheets because they've got, loads of equity from kicking things off.
So I'm going to jump in there on that one, Steve, and pass back to Gillian, because this is right in the centre of the work that you're doing in Strathclyde, and we'll come back to you, Steve, on a few other points. But how does that resonate with you there, Gillian, and like the funding from universities and that bridge, if you will?
I guess from a Strathclyde perspective, we work hard at trying to make sure our research is impactful, and whatever that means, whether it's impactful in terms of used by industry partners who've co-funded it, whether it is licensing that technology, whether it is a spin-out, and it's giving support to those great research outcomes through to whatever creates the best impact. We don't have a big balance sheet of equity, and it's not the primary reason. It's not the only reason why we would do and support spin-outs with both a lot of support, a lot of help and funding. But it's not solely the reason is to make a return. Wow. It's part of the reason is actually we're there, and Strathclyde's motto is a place of useful learning. It's it's about making a difference in our environment in Glasgow, in the region, in the country. And we've got some great technologies from drugs that are still used in anaesthetics through to Hinslight, which is a technology to remove bacteria and infection from surgical items. And that's licensed all around the world. It wasn't a spin out. And through to some fantastically good spin-outs working just now, whether that is enough in alternative food protein sources, Discover on cancer diagnosis, Microplate on antimicrobial resistance, Mirinid, it's a kidney drug, through to Synaptic, which is electrical testing equipment and the grid infrastructure. It's great, but it's not the sole reason for doing that is not about the return. It's about impact. Fantastic if we can get a return, but we try our best not to put difficult conditions into the license assignations, for example, Steve, or undilutable options, for example. So we try and make it as easy as possible, surround our founders with the right talent, the right commercial talent. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges that not just Strathclyde have, but all of our spin-outs. How do they build a C-suite around a capability and technology that can really take a technology or an innovation to market and to scale it successfully?
So can I ask you about that? And that's, sorry, Steve, but I think this is really interesting because I wanted to ask about where do they typically start to wobble, right? You know, so is it about that leadership, building leadership teams round a good idea, or is it funding? Steve, you were talking about the ecosystem there. Do you see a consistent pattern on where things start to wobble a little bit?
For me, it's getting to the point of getting external investment and outside of investment from the university.
Right.
And it's a lot of it is universities are under an awful lot of pressure. This sort of horrendous government constraint on spending that we've been having for the last, 2 decades nearly, has really driven down on universities and education in particular, so that chancellors are more interested in can they fund enough toilet rolls to run the building, and as for investing in early stage spin-outs, there's nothing left for that. So there's real financial challenges. And the reason I mentioned balance sheets is that the US universities have built a balance sheet up independently, and they're able to actually use that to drive their businesses forward. They don't have to rely on government funding. It's almost private. In fact, it is private. The universities are really focused on this. It doesn't mean to say that every single business needs to be spun out to be a new unicorn. But there's funding there to really drive it and make it happen. And that's one of the things that's missing. The second thing that's missing, and Gillian, I think you picked it up earlier, is that getting that ecosystem around the founders so that they can become commercial, they can understand what the process is to move from actually having an idea to bringing it to market, getting the funding and the people in place, how to sell, and how to approach external investors with a credible entity that they can invest in and take forward. I'll stop at that for the moment.
I think there's one element you mentioned there, Steve, is how to sell. I think one of the biggest barriers is paying clients.
Aye.
Selling. So to be able to sell, you need your product market fit, you need demand, you need a decent product that people want to buy or service. But I see the wobble. I think actually a lot of our companies can raise that early kind of seed rounds.
Yes.
Where they start to wobble, and this is where they also struggle in terms of future raises, is having sufficient client bases and really showing demonstrable, repeatable client income, customer income, people going to pay you for whatever it is you do. And that grounding, Scott, you and I both had way back when on how to sell. I think there's a big gap. I've seen it, and you get. Well, certainly some organisations get on, whether they're university spin-outs or not, they're just another startup. You get some government grants, you maybe get some early seed rounds, and you're just always looking to raise. Actually, look at getting more clients paying you for what it is you're selling, and then it's going to be much easier to raise.
Well, I keep saying this to people that, like all this money that you think you're raising, people want a return on that at some point. And the only way people are going to get a return on that is if you go and sell your product. So you can either start that like right now or get your head together as to when you're going to do it. And then going right back to the top of this, I think it's probably fascinating that you coming from a career in selling and large enterprise into this world and trying to kind of bring that discipline. And you've probably forgotten as much about selling as what a lot of these kind of, small businesses know. And it's not being disrespectful or disingenuous. It's just a real learning curve for the guys, girls with great ideas. You're going to have to go and get out the garage and sell it at some point.
Yeah.
Joey picked up the fact that this product market fit, getting from a science project to a product, That is absolutely right. That's exactly where the early stage businesses fall over, and they need funded for that. When you've got a really good science project that really works and it shows real potential, and you can do some of the research around what's the size of the market, who wants to buy this, what are the competition, then you can get funding to turn what you've got into a product that you can sell and sell lots of.
Yeah.
And the skills to do that and the funding to do that are an essential prerequisite to bridge from seed into Series A and Series B, and then the business powers on and does really well.
No, I get it. Good. Okay, listen, really good stuff. So I want to move on a little bit and talk a wee bit more about academia and business coming together, but more about, how working together works or doesn't work. So, Gillian, now that you've been doing this for what at Strathclyde, is it 3 years, 4 years?
4 years. 4 years here. Yeah.
What do you, in your experience, what do you think businesses still get wrong about working with universities? And on the other side as well, what do universities still get wrong about working with businesses?
It's a really good question, and it's something we grapple every day. It was interesting when I went to the Data Lab. One of the, if you want to call them products, one of the things the Data Lab did was they funded collaborations between industry and academia. So they would find a data science and an AI opportunity challenge where university could work with a partner and build a new capability in the data science AI field. So I worked a lot with Strathclyde as part of that. In fact, at the time when I left, the Data Lab had funded more projects with Strathclyde than any of the other universities in Scotland. And my work with Strathclyde was really informative in the fact that they get working with industry. So do other universities, right? But it was the reason that Strathclyde was, they understand it, they speak the language, because a lot of the time, universities and industry speak two different languages. It's West Coast Scottish and Southern Cornish. Yeah,
Greenock and Portsmouth again.
Yeah, yes, two different languages. Where it works best is where academia and industry stop pretending it's about just collaboration, but get honest about what drives them, what incents them, and what's outcomes. Focus on real problems that the industry partner has, not just abstract partnerships. So the strongest relationships start with an industrial or societal problem that somebody somewhere is accountable for solving, not just a vague networking or MOU. Sometimes that's where legally you start. And people that can translate, not just institutional relationships. So an academic that really gets working with an IBM or a Babcock or a NHS, and that means your academics also need to be a slightly different breed. They need to enjoy that work. And there are academics who just don't, and that's absolutely fine. They just like doing research. They like publishing their papers. They don't really enjoy that work. And when your institution values academics who do love that work, really get it, enjoy working on these problems with industry, that understand markets, commercial risk, we still get wrong pace. Industry works at a pace, and academia, we need to keep reminding them the pace that the industry want to work at, and trying to interact in the same space. Get together, really understand and build that trust and challenge. And I think once you've done that, you can see industry partners that have got 3 or 4 universities in the UK, for example, that they're strategic partners. They're their go-to. They know that they do what they say they're going to do. They've got real credible academics researching in areas that are relevant for that company, relevant for the markets they're getting into and the products that they build. And if you get that right, it's really powerful.
So as I'm listening to you there, thank you for that. And I think it's really interesting. And I might be totally wrong in this, but I think if you go back maybe more than 5 years, maybe 10 years, was it a little bit of a vanity project, both sides? Like, we felt as if it was a badge, and I'm not going to name any companies that I used to work for, but yeah, like, look, we're hanging out with the world of academia, and probably there was a little bit of vice versa. And we were never cutting to the chase, like you've just described there. Listen, get a common topic, get something that's going to change something societal, world, environmental, energy. We talk a lot about energy on the show as well. So we're fixing real societal and economic problems here, or trying to, or at least looking at them. And we've got some common, or at least understood goals between us, overlapping, some that probably won't overlap, or develop a little bit of underlap as well. So you've seen the evolution of that, yeah?
Absolutely. And I think there's maybe still some of that vanity going on. But even if I talk about a couple of projects, and these are going back like a decade plus, Strathclyde working with Bruce Power in Canada on using AI image analysis to inspect the inside of fuel rods in the nuclear reactor, and working with the regulators, real tough challenge problems, convincing a regulator that it's reliable, trustworthy, that can help inform maintenance schedules and maintenance windows. These are really tough problems, and that's where it works very well.
I'm now you're touching on Steve's favourite topic about nuclear energy.
Well, part of that.
I can wind him up and point him towards this every day of the week.
Well, absolutely. That's a great use case. Yeah. I wonder, though, there's 2 ways of looking at things. There's the cock-up and the conspiracy. The conspiracy is that everybody just wants a vanity project. I actually think it's much more cock-up, this mismatch, where neither party fully understands the requirements of the other. And if you get into the brains of an academic, the brains of an academic are largely around publishing. Right? They've got to publish something, they've got to get some information out there, they've got to share it. Whilst if you think about a commercial entity, quite the opposite is true. They don't really want to share what the hell's going on. They want to keep it confidential until they can launch it into the market. And the nuances of proving scientifically and getting peer review happens on the academic side, whilst in the operational commercial side, let's get a product that customers want that actually works. And so each party is facing in a different direction. They don't understand each other fully. And the magic happens when you can bring them together and both see what's required, and they both can deliver against each other's needs. Just like a marriage, It's exactly like that. But nuclear, brilliant, and inspection, brilliant. I'm going to get on my hobby horse about nuclear now.
Oh, Steve, we've not got enough time.
No, the damn Scottish government won't allow nuclear
Here we go.
in Scotland anymore, which is just suicidically ridiculous. Anyway, stopped.
Steve, it's Friday afternoon. It's not good for your blood pressure. Get
No,
your
I don't.
get your tracksuit on and go down the gym after this. So listen, I think that's great. Let's keep moving on here a wee bit. And Gillian, I wanted to talk to you about AI and data, and this is going back to a wee bit your work before, and I know that you're still very active in this. Now, I'm going to start with there's guess what? We all know this. There's a huge amount of noise around AI now, agentic AI, whatever you want to call it, blah. And from your vantage point, where are you actually seeing real value being delivered? And the counter to that is, where is it still a wee bit theatre?
Yeah. So I think AI is creating real value. That example I gave in Bruce Power, that's, but that value's not, to be honest, is in quieter, less flashy ways than the hype suggests. It's, have we got a problem? Is AI a tool that we can use to help fix that problem? It's generally very narrow. We can get into a big debate about AGI and, when that might come. But actually, where we're seeing value is in just those specific cases, very domain specific, where you've built models, you've built capability that fixes a problem. So where it's embedded into like real workflows, whether it's in operations, analysis, decision support, which was the Bruce Power one, productivity, teams doing things that used to require a much larger organisation, that's a real competitive shift. So certainly with things like Claude Code, you're seeing radical speed. You're seeing the growth of companies at a rate with 2 people that would have taken 10s, 20s, 30s, odd people a lot longer. Still too many pilots, still too many, I think it was joked at one event with more pilots than Heathrow. A lot of pilots, a lot of lack into production, a lot of trying to use AI to try and paper over cracks of underpinning bad data infrastructure, bad data governance, bad organisational processes. So I think data quality, organisational readiness, leadership willing to redesign our work, but not just automate the bad points.
Yeah.
But the hype's global. It's not just Scotland. I think we've got an opportunity to be more pragmatic, so less theatre, more application. Again, trying to use it as another tool in the toolbox to fix issues now. It's a very, very powerful tool. And the pace of change, certainly in terms of some of the coding capability, is significant.
Yeah. And I think this point about funding, just coming back to it a bit as well, without, going back over the last half an hour. Funding is scarce, full stop, right? Businesses are under pressure, full stop. What's going on in the world is putting pricing and supply chain under pressure, full stop. And actually, it may be that we'll see the pilots starting to dry up a little bit more until, we've got greater clarity about what the outcome's going to be. Because I talk about this a lot, elsewhere about, how do you find the funding now? Going to executives and say, listen, have you got 5 million to spend on a pilot, or 2 million or 1 million or 100 grand? It doesn't really matter. And the hope that something will come out of it seems to me to be getting a bit thinner on the ground for any investment in innovation and technology, never mind just AI.
So there's a few things I'd like to add to this. I think agentic AI is kind of like robotic process automation on steroids. And that was basically about papering over the cracks. So now you've got AI sitting on top of that. And then I think the other thing that's really important is that folks are trying to use AI for problems where it's not currently suitable, or they haven't invested enough in understanding what's happening inside the black box to be able to deliver regulatory compliant solutions, particularly in financial services and life sciences, where the regulator insists that you're able to treat customers fairly in the financial services industry, or give appropriate advice as per the Care Quality Commission if you're doing some medical stuff. And so in many cases, we're trying to push the maturity of the solutions, which is very high, and we haven't got the tools to really guarantee that we're getting a good solution that we can evidence. So that's my penny worth.
Yeah.
I don't know, Steve, if you've come across the work that's been going on at the Financial Regulation Innovation Lab.
I haven't. No, I'd love to.
So it's a partnership between FinTech Scotland, Strathclyde Uni and Glasgow Uni. It's been running for the last, 4 years now, and real opportunity working with the big financial services companies. The regulator was heavily involved, and small fintechs to solve problems. And some of the use cases coming out of that were amazing. So Amicus worked with Virgin Money on know your customer, know your KYC and KYB checks.
Yep.
And that was using academic expertise in AI explainability and risk modelling. There was another one with Patilla and Aberdeen on smarter financial crime detection. So co-created between the large FS who had a problem and a fintech who had a solution. So I'd have a little look. It's been absolutely outstanding. Some real benefits to small growing fintechs and solving problems for the big financial services companies as they laid them out.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be interested in this too. Scott, can we make sure we put that in the notes?
Yeah, great shout out. So, Gillian, if you can send me some link to that, and then I'll get it out when we put the podcast out. So listen, I'd like to talk a wee bit about you. That's you, Gillian, not you, Steve. Right. Just for.
You got Steve every week.
Aye.
Every week, that's right.
So you've gone through that whole graduate IBM leadership journey to CEO to chair, now to a commercial leadership role in education. And I know I've said this 3 or 4 times now, it is a real shift. What has changed for you personally? And, you know, in a terrible way, because I'm not a journalist, I keep saying this, I chain questions, you know, like people just need to live with it. Do you find yourself thinking differently now than perhaps what you did before?
I think the varieties meant I've probably got more tools in my toolkit, if I want to put it that way. A broader set of experiences, that is really, really useful. So like when someone says, you know, what do you do for a living? You can rhyme off the job title and you can say, oh, I'm responsible for this part of the university and I do this and we do that and things. If you boil it down, as a senior exec, the things you do is you understand really complex information, you ask brilliant questions and daft questions, and you make decisions. Yeah.
I love that.
You know,
understand complex information, ask lots of good questions and some daft questions, and make decisions.
Yeah.
We should put some copyright on that, shouldn't we?
If you boil it down, you know, that's
That's about.
It's you boil it down, that's kind of what it is. And I really enjoy it. I really enjoy working with people. And all of those 3 elements are involving people, you know. It doesn't matter if you're making a decision in a university, in a big corporate, if you're making a decision with a customer, if you're on a board helping an exec team make a decision. So I'm just probably really lucky that I've had lots of different experiences that make understanding that complex information a bit easier because you've got a broader context. I've got a bank of questions that would get me a first class honours degree, and and I'm not frightened of making decisions because I'm too old and too grey to, you know, be in absolute fear and awe of the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you.
Don't care anymore, right?
Care, I really care, but I've made a lot of mistakes, and one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was "This too shall pass."
That's right.
This too shall pass. So, in the spirit of questions, right? Some good questions and some daft questions. I should have a jingle for this. Let's get into the wee Dram Quickfire round. Gillian Docherty, Scottish cheddar or Somerset brie?
Cheddar.
not just because it's Scottish. We like our cheese on this show. Best Scottish business myth we tell ourselves.
We're not good enough.
Oh,
No, Scots are tight.
that's just a general. That's a general myth.
That is an absolute myth. Scots are the most open-handed people on the planet.
One thing London still doesn't get about Scotland.
They're smarter than you. Sorry, I interrupted.
Gillian.
The openness. I think it's back to what Steve had actually said. Actually, putting just the friendliness. What's great about Scotland? You're only 2 hops, whether that's from a government minister to the head of one of our largest companies to you're only ever 2 steps, and people generally are really well into open doors.
Love it. Primal Scream or Oasis?
Neither.
Oh. Is that just so? It's not even a Scottish tribal thing. It's just like I don't like any of those kind of.
No.
You're going to say Simple Minds, aren't you?
Simple Minds, Deacon Blue, sailing up the west coast, villages and towns.
I'll be doing
what
is it?
I'll be on my holidays and you'll be doing the rounds.
Yay! Love it. Okay, a startup company you'd wished you'd been involved in.
That's a great question.
They were all great questions. Ish.
Yeah. Apple.
Apple.
They were a startup once.
They were a startup once. Is that from a commercial perspective or just like what a great idea that revolutionised?
Just would have loved to seen what my shares might have been worth now. I think the animation piece really disrupting markets.
Yeah. But when we stopped walking about listening to Simple Minds with big clunky tape recorders carried about and we had a little device in our pocket.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing?
I would be travelling the world, skiing a ski season, enjoying walking, enjoying new cultures and having lots of different experiences.
I think you still probably do a wee bit of that anyway, don't you?
Bit of that.
You do a bit of that. You've got to keep yourself sane. Mm-hmm. Gillian, that's been brilliant. I really enjoyed that. I know we've talked a lot over the years. Some of I've heard before. As I said up front, I think that journey and the stuff you've been doing, and I love that wee story about you just went to the wrong port. you thought it was Greenock and you ended up in Portsmouth. That's a belter. That's a belter, as we'd say in Scotland. And I think the stuff that you're doing in the world of academia and innovation and Scottish Business Network is well done. Congrats to you. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us here. That's another wee Dram on the third half. If you enjoyed it, you know where to find us. Thanks very much, Gillian, and thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks.